Alright guys, I'm going to make this video really short. It's all about Chang Li's kit, and this is all you need to know. So basically her basic attack, there are 4 basic attacks, and then she enters true sight. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, and then she wraps it around, and that's true sight right there. So whenever it's true sight, you can actually see when you pause right here, she holds an umbrella, and then she enters true sight, which is like a charge attack there. And when she does an air combo, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4. She wraps back, and then it's a phoenix. Then you can plunge. Now the plunge attack is just a plunge attack, right? Just like a normal plunge attack. So when she uses her E, she has a different combo as well. She uses her E, slashes up, and then you have a true sight charge right there at the end. So what you could do is like a combo with the E, down 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that, and you plunge down. Another interesting thing is that after you use your E, as you can see, basic jumps are like this, right? I'm pressing spacebar. If I use my E and I don't true sight charge, if I press my spacebar, it's instantly a phoenix because it counts as the 4th true sight charge on air. So that's a phoenix attack. Now let's go into her kit. So first of all, we're going to look at her basic attack. As what I've just mentioned, releasing basic attack 4, you enter true sight, and this lasts for 12 seconds. So you could attack within this 12 seconds and you would be able to get the true sight damage off. The same thing for the mid-air attack, heavy attack. This is when you charge up her attack meter and you kind of just do like an upward strike, right? And you within a certain amount of time, you release mid-air attack 3. So you only have to attack twice mid-air to do the phoenix attack, and then you can plunge it down. So mid-air heavy attack, true sight, use basic attack to perform a plunging attack, right? As you can see. Now moving on to her skill. After releasing resonant skill, she dashes towards the enemy and enters true sight. So right after using her skill, she enters true sight. On land, she does the charge attack, the 3 feathers, and in air, she would instantly use the phoenix attack. 2 initial attempts and can be used up to 2 times. The number of attempts is increased by 1 every 12 seconds. So you can stack up her E. There's a total of 2 stacks of her E maximum, and every 12 seconds you get a refresh. So in true sight, uses ground basic attack. This is what I talked about. So charge, if she jumps using a basic attack or in mid-air, she releases the phoenix attack. Now moving on to her Forte Circuit. This is when she releases her heavy attack, right? This is her Forte. She carries 4 stacks of enflamement. So this is after she stacks her E's and all that. Consumes all stacks to cast Flaming Sacrifice, which deals fusion damage considered as resonant skill damage. So she does go resonant skill damage if you want to build her as main DPS. Now, while casting Flaming Sacrifice, she takes 40% less damage, so she's kind of tanky in that time. She can hold 4 stacks of enflamement in total for her charge attack. She gets 1 for every basic attack true sight conquest on hit, so this is the true sight attack. She gets 1 stack every 5 attacks, basically. And the charge on hit, this is the one in air. So she gets 1 stack every 5 attacks, kind of similar to how Charu works. And she obtains 4 stacks every resonance liberation. So every time she uses her ulti, she instantly gets 4 stacks. So you can charge attack right after her ulti. However, if you want to stack up her ulti normally, you have to use her E and use the true sight attacks. So you basically are very basic attack heavy, but her main bursts are skill damage and her Forte. Now looking at her liberation, she deals a lot of fusion damage to enemies and obtains 4 stacks as we previously mentioned. Enters Fiery Feather. So this is the Fiery Feather passive. When she releases heavy attack, Flaming Sacrifice, which is that charge attack right there. Within 10 seconds, her attack is increased by 25%. And then Fiery Feather ends. So the moment she ultis and you instantly use her charge attack, her attack is increased by 25% until her ulti ends, which is 10 seconds, I think. Yeah, and the cooldown is 20 seconds. Now looking at her inherent skill, Chang Li releases basic attack, blah blah blah. For each stack of enflamement, her fusion damage is increased by 5%. And as we know, there are only 4 stacks of enflamement in total, so that's 20% fusion damage bonus. Now her kit's obviously a lot of crit rate, right? 12% crit rate just from, I mean, not 12%, 10% crit rate just from the substats right there. And the second inherent skill set is that she releases heavy attack and or resonance liberation radius of fealty. Her fusion damage bonus is increased by 20% and ignores 15% of target's defense when dealing damage. So this is kind of the threshold that you need. This is the level 71 if I'm not wrong. And this is the one that you need for her to be a main DPS. Because now she deals fusion damage bonus that's increased by 20% and ignores target defense, which is quite huge. Up till now, we don't have any DPS characters that kind of ignores defense, so she will be really huge. But the thing that we have to talk about is her outro skill, right? She is a buffer, so that means she could technically still act very well as a sub DPS. So you use her stacks, 4 stacks, ulti out, and then charge attack a few times, another stack or whatever, and then you switch it out. The best fusion damage DPS so far in the game is probably gonna be Encore. They could pair with her, and I think because I don't have Encore, I feel like that's kind of a waste because her kit does a lot of damage, but her outro skill doesn't really help her as a main DPS. Her outro skill is just buffing resonance liberation damage and fusion damage. So she could still be a sub DPS for Rover, if you will, because the Havoc Rover does a lot of damage on resonance liberation. Her skill damage percentage is the highest scaling in the game so far. And as you can see, as a main DPS, she does just summons damage off of her outro based on her attack, right? And then Jinxie, as you can see, as a main DPS, her outro gives her more stacks via her passive errors in Unity from damage of the same attribute more effectively at one time every 1 second for 20 seconds. So when she does outro, she gets even more stacks. When Havoc Rover does an outro, she gets even more damage off before she goes off field. Then Calcharo summons a Phantom, so he does damage as well. So these are like common traits that main DPS characters have, whereas Chang Li is more of a buffing outro, the same as Yin Lin actually. So Yin Lin buffs electro damage and liberation, but only well, for 14 seconds, whereas Chang Li does it for 10 seconds. It's the same percentage, 14 versus 10 seconds. So I guess Yin Lin would kind of be better. Now looking into her echoes, obviously when you view her as main DPS, you want to go Molten Set, right? And I understand that Inferno Riders are really hard to use because it takes a long time to charge up the attacks. However, it's probably going to be her best in slot until another 4-cost fusion damage echo comes out, which I think would be foreseeable. I think there might be a new 4-cost fusion boss in the future. And as you can see, it buffs fusion damage and basic attack damage. So you kind of have to go 1, 2, 3, and boop. So that's like 4 seconds, 4.5 seconds before you buff basic attack damage, which is what she kind of heavily relies upon. She really does a lot of basic attack in her kit. As you can see, you need to do 4 attacks, 5th attacks through the charge, and then you get a stack if you hit the enemies. So she is very fusion, basic attack reliant, right? Now going into her sequences, S1 I think is really bad because it only increases her damage dealt by 10%. And I mean, she gives what resistance to interruption, so she can't be knocked back or whatever or stunned or anything like that, but it's not really that huge. I think S2 is where it's a really, really good point that she can be in, because it increases her crit rate by 25%. And as you can already see in her Forte, she gets 10% from just her Forte. You add that by 25%, that's 35%, right? So with 35% crit rate, if you use her crit damage weapon, you could just go a crit rate echo at max level, and they would probably be giving you about 60 to 70% crit rate. You'll be able to get 300% crit damage and 60+% crit rate. That's really, really good, really easy to build. Whereas if you go crit damage, you could go over cap and 350 crit damage with 40% crit rate, which is still insane, because that makes her so much easier to build crit on as compared to other characters like Jingxi, because as you can see, she has crit rate as well, 10%. Her weapon is crit rate, and even with that, and me going crit damage echo, she has 65 to 47. Not as good of a god roll substat as I wanted to, but basically it's harder to build crit on Jingxi as it is to build on Chang Li. Another thing that I want to talk about is the fact that Chang Li is probably one of the only characters that can go Emerald of Genesis with very, very high efficiency. And the reason for that is because Emerald of Genesis requires you to stack up resonance skill. And the only other character that can do it in the game is Rover. Because the Havoc Rover, can use her E, charge attack to go into Dark Search mode, and then use her E again. So then there are a total of 2 stacks, 12% attack, right? The Havoc Rover is the only other person that can do that. Whereas Chang Li, as we've already seen, she has 2 stacks of her E. So she could technically do E and E, boom, and her attack is raised by 12%, right? So she's the only other character that can go Emerald of Genesis. I think that's really good on her as well, because she gets enough crit rate off of this. She can go for crit damage echo and overcapped on that. But I'm obviously going to go for her weapon, her signature weapon, and that's gonna be a crit damage substat. So she would probably be better off going crit rate for cost over crit damage, since you wouldn't have enough crit rate without S2. And that's kind of my plans. I want to get her to get her weapon to level 80, get more crit damage, start building my echoes, and see how it goes. Like, that's kind of all I wanted to talk about on Chang Li's kit, and I hope everyone gets, better luck summoning her. Everyone should win their 50/50s and get her weapon early, right? I hope everyone gets Chang Li if they want to. Wish everyone the best of luck, and peace out.